Welcome back to Tears for Fears. I'm your host, Megan Shoup. You can find me on Twitter at Megs08DFS. And I know we have a lot of injury and COVID-related news to pay attention to this week, but I'm still super excited to go through Week 15 tiers and find our core plays. And now you can use my tier simulator on fanspeak.com to help you get lineup suggestions because it'll be built in with my core plays. So what are we going to do in this show? We're going to find our core plays in this show using Run the Sims, because Run the Sims helps me make my tiers decisions. And then you can go over to fanspeak.com and check it out to figure out different lineup combinations that you like. I know I need to improve my combinations and mixing up my core plays better. But before we get started, be sure to like this episode and of course subscribe to the Mayo Media Network. So with that, we got a lot to get to. Let's get right to it. I know we usually look back before we look ahead, but I have another fun exercise. I've actually compiled the data through week 14 so we can take a cumulative look at tiers data so far and see if we can find edges. And right here, you can see that we're looking at the different positions and the ownership and seeing if there's a big differential. Because they combine running back, wide receiver, and tight end. And there really isn't. Each week's kind of its own beast as to kind of who goes off and who you want to target and where you can gain leverage. So that's something where there isn't a huge leverage spot. But where there is leverage, I think, is in stacks. I've said from the very beginning, be open to stacks, but don't force stacks. And as you can see, we're looking at the top 1% of lineups, data for the top 1% of lineups. Approximately 75% had just one or two team stacks. So that's something to keep in mind. Be open to it, but don't force it. And, 41% just had one team stack. And as far as game stacks, 50% had zero game stacks of the top 1%. 38% did have one game stack, and then it went much lower from there. So you definitely don't want to force in a lot of game stacks. So that's something to keep in mind. Then we go over and look at the top 1% and sub 15% owned players. Well, as you can see, the average cumulative is 1.8 essentially. So essentially, if you're getting between one or two players less than 15% owned, I think you're really gaining an edge. Where are most of the top 1% finding them? As I mentioned, in tiers 6, 7, and 8, it goes up, especially in tier 8, the most. So those last three tiers is really where you want to be looking for those low-owned gems. With that, let's get into week 15. So first, a disclaimer. Obviously, if you guys have been watching any daily fantasy content on YouTube or reading any articles, you know there are a ton of injuries to monitor. There are a ton of COVID cases we need to monitor. So you'll see as we go tier by tier, there are a ton of Q tags, people that are already out. So we really have to monitor things right up till Sunday lock, and honestly through the 4 o'clock, up until the 4 o'clock games, to make sure there might not be any changes we need to make there. This is a week where you can have a lot of leverage just by paying attention all the way up through lock, because there could be some late scratches. So I'm going to do my very best today to give you the best news I can on a Thursday, but things could change. So what are we going to do? I'm going to give you an updated kind of favorite plays, core plays, in the YouTube comments on Saturday afternoon or evening and on Twitter. So that'll kind of be, kind of my final look then. But hopefully this is a good starting point for you guys. So let's get right to it. In Tier 1, we have quarterbacks with Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, Matthew Stafford, and Aaron Rodgers. And just like last week, any of these guys would be a scary fade, so I'm going to have exposure to all of them. So I'm going to kind of give you a list of order of least exposure to most exposure. And I'm going to have the least exposure to Josh Allen. With that injured ankle, it makes me a little nervous that it takes away the running side of his game. And I don't think he's going to need as much pushback in that game. Number 3 is going to be Matthew Stafford. I do really like him in this game. He just comes a little below the top 2. Number 2 is Aaron Rodgers. Yes, he's playing with this toe injury, but he's playing out of his mind right now. And I think he's got an excellent matchup against a pass funnel with the Ravens. And then number 1 is Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray is my favorite play because he does have that rushing upside and could throw some, 2-3 touchdowns in this game. So I think he definitely has the highest ceiling. So Kyler Murray is my tier 1 play. In Tier 2, we have Cooper Kupp, Devontae Adams, Deebo Samuel, Najee Harris, and George Kittle. And in this tier, I'm going to fade Harris and Samuel. Harris has a difficult matchup. I think it's going to be hard to find a ceiling here. And Samuel just hasn't been getting the targets, especially since Kittle's come back. So my core plays are Kupp, Adams, and Kittle. And boy, is that hard because all three of these guys are just going nuts right now. But come on, let's keep it simple. The guy with the highest ceiling and has proven to have the highest ceiling consistently all season is Cooper Kupp. So for that reason, I'm not going to overthink it. Cooper Kupp is my Tier 2 play. And in Tier 3, we have Deontay Johnson, Joe Mixon, CeeDee Lamb, Stephon Diggs, and Ezekiel Elliott. And in this tier, I'm really just going to fade Elliott. He clearly is playing injured and not getting his typical workload. So my core plays are going to be Johnson, Mixon, Lamb, and Diggs, and I'm going to rotate through all of them. But my favorite play is definitely Deontay Johnson. The Titans defense is a bit of a pass funnel, so I definitely think Deontay Johnson can have a ceiling performance here in a big week, but he's also just consistently getting so many targets. So for that reason, again, I'm not overthinking it. Deontay Johnson is my Tier 3 play. And in Tier 4, we have Cordarrelle Patterson, Jamar Chase, Tyler Lockett, Aaron Jones, DeAndre Hopkins, and Amari Cooper. And then, as you can see, Tyler Lockett is on the COVID-19 list and DeAndre Hopkins is out. With only 4 players left, I'm going to have exposure to all of them. I think Amari Cooper probably has the lowest floor. Aaron Jones is very volatile. Cordarrelle Patterson probably has the safest floor, and Jamar Chase has the highest ceiling. So that's kind of how I'm looking at it. While I'll have exposure to all, I'd probably lean a little more to Patterson and Chase because of the floor and ceiling that they provide. But for this instance, I am going to chase the ceiling. Did you get the pun there? Anyways, we're going to have Jamar Chase as our Tier 4 play. And in Tier 5, we're back to quarterbacks again with Jalen Hurts, Dak Prescott, Joe Burrow, Russell Wilson, Jimmy Garoppolo, and Tua Tagovailoa. And the only one I'm really fading is Hurts. I'm never a fan of relying on Hurts to hit his ceiling when he relies so much on rushing, and now he has the ankle injury. We don't even know if he's been cleared to play, but I especially don't see him hitting his ceiling on a bum ankle. So my core plays are going to be Prescott, Burrow, Wilson, Garoppolo, and Tagovailoa. And my 2 favorites are probably Wilson and Dak. I know it's scary to go back to Dak, but I went over to run the Sims. I went to the rangefinder tool, and he does have a much higher win rate. So while it's a little scary and while we're a little nervous, is Dak playing injured? I think he has a great matchup here, and Dak Prescott is my Tier 5 play. In Tier 6, we have James Conner, T. Higgins, Jalen Waddle, DK Metcalf, Javonte Williams, and Saquon Barkley. As you can see, Waddle is out on the COVID-19 list, and I'm really skeptical that Conner will be able to play coming off that injury from Monday night. I also really don't have interest in Barkley, so that really just leaves me with Higgins, Metcalf, and Williams. If for some reason Melvin Gordon is out, I will have a lot of interest in Javonte Williams as one of my favorite plays. But since Lockett is now on the COVID-19 list, that easily makes DK Metcalf my Tier 6 play. In Tier 7, we have Mark Andrews, Brandon Cooks, Melvin Gordon III, Antonio Gibson, James Robinson, Devonta Smith, Brandon Ayuk, and Sony Michel. And I really don't have any strong fades here. Obviously, if Henderson were to play for the Rams, I wouldn't be as interested in Michel. But I do have plays that I like a little bit more than others. And the plays I like the most, obviously, if Javonte Williams was ruled out, I would then be very interested in Melvin Gordon. But my 2 favorites probably are Mark Andrews and Brandon Cooks. So I went over to run the Sims, go to the rangefinder tool. It is very close, but Brandon Cooks has a 55% win rate. And he got a lot of targets last week and looked really good. So I'm going to go with Brandon Cooks as my Tier 7 play. Finally, in Tier 8, we have Marquise Brown, Chase Claypool, Mike Gesicki, Russell Gage, Odell Beckham Jr., Julio Jones, Donta Foreman, and Rashad Penny. And obviously, Odell Beckham Jr. is on the COVID list and out. I have really no interest in Julio Jones, Foreman, or Penny, so that leaves me with core plays of Brown, Claypool, Gesicki, and Gage. My favorites are probably Claypool and Gesicki. Even Gage has been getting a much higher target share recently. I think Claypool and Gage could be a little lower owned. And so, again, we talked about earlier in this episode, looking for those low owned gems. But the safer play, I think, is Mike Gesicki with Waddle out. I think Tua likes to throw underneath, and so that's a perfect fit here. So I'll say that Gesicki is my tier 8 play, but if you're looking for some lower owned pieces, especially here in tier 8, I really do like Claypool and Gage. That'll do it for this week's Tears for Fears. What do you guys think of my lineup? Please let me know in the comments section, and let me know your favorite tier 8 low-owned gem. With that, I have a lot of reminders for you. Please obviously be sure to like this episode, subscribe to the Mayo Media Network, check out Run the Sims to help make your tiers decisions, and then go over to fanspeak.com and check out the new tiers simulator, which just basically has all these core plays in and can just rotate through and give you different lineup suggestions. Also, remember to check back here on Saturday evening and on my Twitter. I'll give updates after some more injury news of my favorite plays. So with that, let's go make some money, and I'll see you back here next week.